great to have you on the show. It was a down day for the major averages, but we still managed to eke out gains here. I want to get your thoughts on the levels, especially given the fact that so many folks are bearish, but you are not.
Yes, I mean, I would say this is a week where the bullish narrative succeeded because we had some decent inflation prints. We've had some market sell-off in the middle of the week because of Fed commentary and the FOMC minutes about a recession potentially. But the stock market actually ended up higher for the week. And I think it just shows that as much as sort of a logic and intuition tell people that we're going to have a recession, number one, earnings have actually delivered better. I mean, we had some good bank earnings today. In fact, if you look at 2-year stacked, earnings are still up over where they were 2 years ago. So part of this, what people call an earnings recession, is just because earnings were so good last year. And the market's up 8% year to date. So, now we've had 2 consecutive quarters of gains. It's never happened in a bear market since 1950. So I know it doesn't feel like it, but I think it's really a bullish narrative that's driving markets right now.
You did have Fed minutes this week, too, and it was forecasted in those that the Fed is expecting this banking crisis to potentially lead to a mild recession. Does that give you any pause in terms of how you're thinking about the rest of the year?
I mean, it does and it doesn't. I think, investors may have overreacted to the Fed staffers saying there's a recession. Number one, that's the staffers, and that's not necessarily a revelation given how much the consensus view has been that we're entering a recession. And just keep in mind, these are the Fed staffers, not the voting members. And, last year there was a lot of talk that the Fed staffers could have had some sort of potential clerical errors because of a Harvard Analytics hack. So I wouldn't say that these are the word of God coming. And more importantly, I think it's appropriate for the Fed to be cautious and to keep in mind that there's a recession, because at the end of the day, that's going to affect the way they actually affect monetary policy. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's not entirely bad news. This would put a ceiling on where rates end up peaking, and that's actually what's important to markets.
I love having you on a day and a week like this, Tom. I believe your S&P target for end of year is 4750, which is up about 15% from here. And if I understand your argument correctly, you're saying that because so many people expect that stocks are going to drop and that we're going to have at least a mild recession, that's armor against it happening?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, a bear market ends when the market doesn't go down on bad news. I mean, we've had a string of bad news for the last 6 months, and the stock market is almost 20% higher. And to get to something like 4,700 by year end, which is sort of knocking on the doors of all-time highs, keep in mind that in January 2022, when we were at all-time highs, a lot of sectors, including energy and some of the defensives, were 20% lower. So to get to the old highs, a lot of the cyclicals don't have to be at all-time highs. In fact, ex-FANG, the market's still at 14.8 times forward earnings. I mean, that's not demanding when the 10-year has a 3 handle on it. So I think that, again, a lot has to go right. But I'd say that the bearish narrative that people are sort of using as, I think is really the prevalent case, isn't playing out because the market, again, has posted 2 consecutive quarters of gains, and it's up 8% year to date.
So riddle me this, though, Tom, because here's what I can't figure out about where you're leading us in this argument. The Fed is going to pull back if credit availability tightens, if we're getting this really slowing economy scenario that eventually would have to play out through earnings. How does that not happen, and yet inflation remains under control, employment stays high, and the Fed doesn't have to start hiking rates again? How do you get all of those things happening at once? Yeah. It seems kind of impossible.
That's right, John. I hear what you're saying. I think what it comes down to is the Fed going to tolerate financial conditions easing? And they're going to allow financial conditions to ease if they think that the risks are shifting from, as you know, today a lot of Fed governors will say, oh, well, the risks of over-tightening are low relative to not doing enough. I think that the shift in the conversation is now increasingly the risks of doing too much are equal or now greater than doing too little, which means the Fed could tolerate inflation not getting down to 2% if they think that there's enough progress being made. That's actually a half full argument. And if you look at the PPI and CPI, that's the message that's coming out. Inflation, excluding shelter, okay, and there's in fact, the Penn State researchers have this thing called the ACY index where they recalculate core CPI using real-time measures of housing and rent. It's actually negative month over month, and it's 0% year over year. So based on like real-time, not statistically lagged CPI, the Fed has achieved its target. So I think the key is, in that bullish view, is that inflation's actually going to undershoot faster, and we're seeing a lot of progress, and that's why Fed funds are coming down, and then the markets can rally.
Yeah, I mean, we did see bond yields, Treasury yields pop today, though, and we did get that Michigan sentiment survey for April that, yes, showed a rise in consumer sentiment, but also a sharp increase in inflation expectations. And we did get some hawkish commentary from the likes of Waller and Bostic, too, though.
Yes, that's right. I mean, the Michigan survey is important because it's so widely used, and it's been around since 1978. But our data science team put together some analysis. Whenever you've seen a 1 month change of that 1 year inflation by more than 100 basis points, that's happened 6 times. 4 of the 6 times, it was sort of an anomalous pop because it was either reversing something that declined or it's going to quickly reverse. And the only 2 times it was sort of signal was 2021 and 2020. So outside of this sort of inflation period, I'd say that that survey surge might be anomalous, and we might see, because it's a mid-month, you know, there's going to be another 400 responses in the next 2 weeks. It may come down sharply after that.
Okay. Tom Lee, thanks for kicking off the hour with us.
Thank you.
Right now, let's get into bank